Standing on a glacier feels like standing on another planet. The cold comes up through your boots first. It seeps through the insoles, through your socks, into the bones of your feet. Sound travels differently on ice. Voices carry too far. Footsteps sound hollow. The only natural noise is the deep, distant cracking as the glacier shifts beneath you, a sound like something massive turning over in its sleep. I've worked at the Athabasca Glacier for 9 years. I know every sound it makes. On June 14th, I was standing at the edge of a crevasse that hadn't existed the day before. I expected cold air rising from below. Every crevasse breathes cold. That's just physics. Ice is cold, darkness is cold, depth is cold. This one breathed warm. I've pulled bodies out of glaciers. I know what death looks like in ice. But when I descended into that crevasse, I found something worse. Something that was still digesting. That morning started like every other. I'm a certified glacier guide. 9 years on the Athabasca Glacier in Jasper National Park. I'm trained in crevasse rescue, ice climbing, and wilderness medicine. This glacier is my office. In 2019, I pulled a climber out of a 90-foot crevasse in deteriorating weather. He'd fallen and broken his pelvis. The temperature was dropping fast. I rigged a Z-pulley system, coordinated with 2 other guides, and got him out in 40 minutes. He walked out of the hospital 3 months later. No permanent injuries. That's the kind of work I do. My current group was solid. 4 experienced clients. 5-day glacier trek on a standard route. Perfect weather. No red flags. There was one odd thing that morning. Parks Canada sent an advisory before we departed. It warned of increased glacial activity and recommended all guides carry extra emergency rations and satellite communication devices. I thought it was standard bureaucratic caution. Cover your bases paperwork. We were also testing new thermal imaging equipment for Parks Canada research, documenting glacial melt patterns. The device was clipped to my pack, fully charged. Day 2, 0940 hours. One of my clients spotted something that wasn't on the route map. My client Marcus stopped walking first. He pointed ahead. Is that supposed to be there? It wasn't. A crevasse cut straight across our planned route. 6 feet wide. It ran at least 200 feet in both directions, disappearing into the ice like a scar. I pulled out my GPS and checked yesterday's route survey data. Nothing recorded here. This location showed solid ice less than 24 hours ago. I pulled up satellite imagery on my tablet. 48 hours ago, this exact spot was an unbroken glacier. I looked at the walls of the crevasse. That's when something felt wrong. Natural crevasses have jagged edges. The ice fractures under stress over months, sometimes years. The walls are rough and uneven. These walls were smooth, almost polished, like something had melted its way through from below. I told myself maybe the survey missed it, but I personally walked this route yesterday morning. I told myself the satellite data was outdated, but it updates every 24 hours. I keyed my radio. Base camp, this is Guide Unit 7. We have an uncharted crevasse blocking our primary route. Requesting alternate path confirmation. The response came fast. Too fast. Unit 7, we're tracking 3 other new crevasses on satellite within a 2-mile radius of your position. All 4 appeared within the last 36 hours. Advise immediate return to base camp via southern alternate. I stared at the radio. Crevasses don't appear overnight. They form over months as glaciers shift and internal pressure builds. Sometimes years. They don't just open up in 36 hours. 4 of them. all at once. I told the group we needed to head back. Everyone agreed except Dr. Sarah Chin. She was a marine biologist from Vancouver. Smart, curious, fearless. "Can we just get a closer look first?" she asked. "I've never seen a real crevasse." "Just 5 minutes." Said yes. "Brief stop only. Standard educational observation." That was my first mistake. As we walked toward the edge, I felt something that made no sense at all. 5 feet from the edge, I felt it. Warm air. Not slightly cool. Not ambient temperature buffered by wind. Like standing near an open oven. Rising steadily from the crevasse below. I stopped walking. I pulled my digital thermometer from my chest pocket and held it over the opening. 58 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not possible. Glacier ice sits at 32 degrees or below. Boys, that's not a guideline, it's thermodynamics. I tied the thermometer to a length of cord and lowered it to 50 feet. 64 degrees. Deeper was warmer. The clients looked at each other. Nobody spoke. Sarah broke the silence. Could it be geothermal? Hot springs pushing heat up from below. It was a smart guess. I had to shut it down. Athabasca sits on Precambrian bedrock, I said. Geologically stable. No volcanic systems. No hot springs. Nothing down there that produces heat. Nobody had an answer. I unclipped the thermal imaging camera from my pack. Parks Canada wanted data on glacial melt patterns. This qualified. I pointed it at the crevasse and checked the display. The walls glowed red-orange on the screen. 80 degrees Fahrenheit at depth. Hotter than a warm summer day. Coming from inside a glacier. Then I saw the movement. The walls were pulsing. Slow. Rhythmic. Like something breathing in and out. Not shifting the way stressed ice shifts, not cracking or settling. Pulsing. A steady, biological rhythm. My first thought was sensor error. I adjusted the camera settings. Recalibrated the display. Same result. Derek, one of my clients and a mechanical engineer, leaned over my shoulder. Could be internal pressure, he said. Ice shifting in pockets. I shook my head. Ice doesn't pulse. It fractures. It flows. It collapses. But it doesn't exhibit peristaltic motion, the kind of rhythmic contraction you see in living tissue. In muscle. In organs. That word came to me and I pushed it away immediately. Living. I decided to get visual confirmation before we left. I dug a GoPro camera from my pack, attached it to a static line, and rigged it over the edge. I started lowering it into the crevasse. 60 feet down, the rope went tight. Then it was ripped from my hands. The live feed on my phone showed everything clearly. At 40 feet, the walls were smooth and blue. Almost translucent. I could see faint striations running horizontally through the ice, like growth rings in old wood. At 60 feet, the walls came into sharper focus. They were moving. Not the slow grinding shift of glacial pressure. Not settling or cracking. They were contracting, pulling inward, then releasing. A slow, rhythmic squeeze. Like watching the walls of a throat swallow. I started pulling the camera back up immediately. Hand over hand. The rope went taut. I pulled harder. Braced my boots against the ice and leaned back with my full weight. The rope held for 2 seconds. Then something yanked it down. The rope burned through my gloved hands so fast I couldn't close my grip. 50 feet of reinforced climbing line disappeared into the darkness in under 3 seconds. At the edge, the rope was cut clean. Not frayed. Not abraded from rubbing against ice. Cut. The way a blade cuts. One smooth, precise edge. I stood there staring at it. $600 of equipment. Gone. Taken. Nobody spoke. Sarah finally said it quietly. What could do that? I didn't have an answer. I marked the location with 2 GPS waypoints, flagged the edge with an orange safety cord, and told everyone to move back. Nobody argued. The hike back to base camp took 3 hours. The whole way, I ran through explanations in my head. Subglacial stream with extreme current. That could explain the rope being pulled. But not the heat. And not the clean cut. Structural collapse creating vacuum suction. I'd heard of that in cave systems. But it doesn't explain the pulsing walls or the severed rope. Equipment malfunction on the thermal camera. Possible for one reading. Not for every reading. And not for the live video feed. None of it fit. The walls had moved like muscle tissue. The rope had been cut like something had teeth. The air was warm enough to be coming from a living body. I kept walking. Back at base camp, I went straight to the research library. Started searching the Parks Canada digital archives for any historical incidents on this part of the glacier. I found a document that had been flagged as restricted access. I opened it anyway, and everything I thought I knew about this glacier stopped making sense. The document was buried deep in the archive system. It took me 20 minutes of searching to find it. Filed under a miscellaneous folder from 1924, flagged with a red banner, restricted access, historical sensitivity. I opened it anyway. It was a scanned expedition report. Yellowed pages, typed on an old machine, with handwritten notes in the margins. The title read, Canadian Alpine Club Expedition Report, Athabasca Glacier, June 1923. Lead researcher, Dr. Elliot Vance. I started reading. Vance's team had found the same thing we found. Warm air rising from crevasse systems. Walls that moved. Temperatures that violated every rule of glacial physics. He wrote, anomalous ice formations in Sector 7B exhibiting thermal properties inconsistent with glacial geology. Temperatures measured up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit within crevasse systems. Biomechanical responses observed upon external stimuli. Then his personal notes, written in the margins in pencil. The ice is not ice. Microscopy reveals cellular structures. Organic compounds detected throughout sample material. The formation exhibits peristaltic motion when disturbed. This is not a geological phenomenon. His recommendation was clear: immediate quarantine of Sector 7B, prohibited access. Federal notification required. I turned to the final page. There was an addendum, different typeface, added by someone else, dated 1924. Dr. Elliot Vance and expedition team lost to Crevasse Fall, June 18, 1923. Bodies unrecovered. The area was subsequently buried by a controlled avalanche. Sector 7B reclassified as a geologically unstable zone. Permanent closure recommended and implemented. I read that 3 times. Controlled avalanche. Not natural. Controlled. Someone deliberately buried the area after Vance's team disappeared. I pulled up the coordinate grid from Vance's report and cross-referenced it with our GPS data from this morning. Sector 7B. Exact match. Same location. Same readings. Same behavior. This thing had been here in 1923. Vance found it. His entire team vanished inside it. And then someone buried it deliberately and locked the report away where no one would look. 100 years later, the glacier was melting. The ice was thinning. Whatever had been buried was waking up. And I had brought 4 clients directly to its doorstep. I closed the laptop and checked my watch. It was past 10 at night. I did a head count. Sarah wasn't back yet. Sarah had told Marcus she was going outside to review her photos. That was at 20:30 hours. By 2200, she still hadn't come back. I grabbed my headlamp and radio and started searching immediately. Marcus and Derek came with me. We spread out in a line and swept the area around the lodge. We found her gear 400 meters out. Her backpack was sitting upright in the snow. Her crampons were beside it, still buckled together. And her ice axe, her personal axe, not a rental, was embedded deep in the snow at the edge of the crevasse. The pick was buried at an angle, like she'd swung it down hard to stop herself from sliding. Her headlamp was lying in the snow next to it, still on, beam pointing straight down into the darkness below. No drag marks anywhere, no signs of a fall or a struggle, just the axe in the ice and the light pointing down. I radioed base camp and requested emergency rescue support. 2 Parks Canada rescue specialists arrived within 20 minutes. Full technical gear. We established a radio contact protocol, check in every 30 seconds. I descended first. The walls of the crevasse were different at night. In the headlamp beam, they looked almost organic. The surface had a faint sheen to it, like wet skin. The texture wasn't crystalline the way normal ice looks up close. It was smooth and slightly layered, like the inside of a shell. At 40 feet, the warmth became intense. I was sweating inside my shell jacket. At 65 feet, my headlamp caught something below me. Sarah. She was alive. Her eyes were open and tracking my light. She was breathing, but she wasn't hanging from a rope. She wasn't standing at the bottom. She was on the wall. From mid-torso down, her body was embedded in the crevasse wall. Not pinned, not wedged, absorbed, like the ice had slowly pulled her in and closed around her. Her face, arms, and upper chest were exposed. Everything below her waist was inside the wall. Sarah. I kept my voice steady. Can you hear me? Yes. Her voice was quiet. Too quiet. Are you hurt? I can't feel my legs. She blinked slowly. But it doesn't hurt. It's warm there. Really warm. I reached out and touched the ice around her waist. It wasn't solid. It was soft, pliable, like pressing your hand into thick gel. And it was warm, body temperature, maybe warmer. I grabbed her arms and pulled. She didn't move at all. Not an inch. The wall held her like it had grown around her on purpose. I pulled out my ice saw and pressed the blade against the wall beside her hip. The blade went in easily. Then something came out of the cut that wasn't water. The blade went in like I was cutting through wet foam. That was the first wrong thing. Ice has resistance. Even warm ice fights back a little. This material gave way almost instantly, the saw sinking 4 inches with barely any pressure. Then the fluid came. It seeped out of the cut slowly at first. Then faster. Clear and thick, almost oily. It ran down the wall in slow ribbons. The smell hit me immediately. Method. Decomposing vegetation. Like pulling up a handful of swamp mud that had been buried for a very long time. It wasn't water. Then the wall moved. The area around the cut contracted. A visible tightening, like a muscle flexing. It happened fast, a sharp, involuntary response. Sarah screamed. Not a pain scream. A shock scream. It's pulling me, she said. It's pulling me further in. Stop cutting. Please stop. I pulled the saw out immediately. The contraction slowed. The wall settled back. Marco, one of the rescue specialists, crouched beside me and collected a sample of the fluid in a sterile vial from his kit. He sealed it without a word and put it in his chest pocket. Jake, the other specialist, tried a different approach. He pulled out a portable butane torch, standard rescue gear for melting ice in tight extractions. He held the flame against the wall 6 inches from Sarah's shoulder. Nothing happened. The ice didn't melt. The heat spread instead. I watched it move through the wall in a visible wave, lighting up the interior like veins carrying warm blood. The glow pulsed outward in every direction, fading as it went deeper. The temperature in the crevasse went up. I felt it immediately. But the structure didn't change. The wall stayed solid around Sarah. The material absorbed every bit of that heat without melting. Sarah was staring at the wall beside her face. "I can feel it," she whispered. "Feel what?" I asked. "It's thinking." She said it like she was describing the weather. Almost curious. "There's something happening inside it. I can feel it moving. It's slow, but it's there." I looked at Marco. He looked at Jake. Nobody said anything. I made the call. "We're going up," I said. "We need containment equipment and a biological specialist. We can't cut her out without triggering a response." I pressed a glow stick into the wall above Sarah's head. Bright green, visible from above. "We're coming back," I told her, "with the right equipment." "Okay," she said. She wasn't scared anymore. That was the part that scared me. She turned her face back toward the wall and stared at it like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. We ascended in silence. Back at base camp, Marco sent the fluid sample by emergency courier to the University of Alberta Biology Department. Rush analysis. Priority flagged. 18 hours later, the results came back. And everything I had been hoping was wrong turned out to be right. The email arrived at 0340 hours. I hadn't slept. The subject line read, "Urgent Biological Analysis Results, University of Alberta." I opened it. The lab report was 6 pages long, dense with technical language. But the key findings were clear enough. The fluid contained biological material, complex proteins, active enzymes, nucleic acids, the kind of chemistry you find in living organisms, not geological formations. DNA sequencing had been attempted. The results came back flagged as unclassified. The genetic structures didn't match anything in existing databases. Not bacterial, not fungal, not a plant, not an animal. Something else entirely. Carbon-14 dating of the organic compounds put the sample at approximately 42,000 years old. Give or take 3,000 years. 42,000 years. My phone rang at 0400. A known number. "This is Dr. Patricia Holloway. I'm the director of the Molecular Biology Lab at the University of Alberta. Who collected this sample and where exactly did you get it?" I told her. "Athabasca Glacier. Crevasse Wall. Jasper National Park." Silence on the other end. "This organism predates modern human civilization," she said, "by tens of thousands of years. The genetic analysis shows clear extremophile characteristics. Adapted to sub-zero temperatures. Low oxygen. Extreme pressure. This is a dormant metabolism reactivating." "What kind of organism?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "We don't know," she said. "That's the honest answer. It shares characteristics with slime molds, extremophile bacteria found in deep ocean vents, and certain ancient fungal networks. But the complexity is beyond any of those categories." "What do you mean by complexity?" The genetic markers suggest higher-order biological functions, she said carefully. A distributed nervous system, possibly. Chemical signaling across large distances. Maybe even primitive cognition. I sat with that word for a moment. Cognition. Are you saying it thinks? I'm saying the genetic capacity for something like thinking appears to be present, she said. Whether it's active is another question. I thought about what Sarah had whispered in the crevasse. It's thinking. We need to contain this immediately, Dr. Holloway said. Do not allow further contact. Do not introduce any heat sources into the crevasse. And do not, under any circumstances, allow anyone else to enter it. I thanked her and hung up. I sat in the dark for a moment and let it settle. This wasn't a glacier. It was a living organism, ancient beyond comprehension, frozen for 40,000 years while humans built civilizations above it. Now the ice was melting, the temperature was rising, and it was waking up, and Sarah was still inside it. I woke the rescue team at 0430. We geared up in silence and headed back to the crevasse. At 65 feet, we found Sarah's glow stick exactly where I'd left it. But Sarah had changed. Sarah was deeper in the wall. When I'd left her, she was embedded from the waist down. Now the wall had taken her to chest level. Only her head, neck, and shoulders remained exposed. Her skin had changed color. A faint blue tint beneath the surface, like light passing through thin ice. Her eyes were open, but they were wrong. A milky film covered both of them, clouding the irises completely. She spoke before any of us did. Extraction is unnecessary. The voice was flat. No emotion. No inflection. Like a recording played back at the wrong speed. Integration is 67% complete. Consciousness transfer will finalize within 8 hours. Nobody moved. I stepped closer. Sarah. I kept my voice steady. Do you know who I am? She tilted her head. Slow. Mechanical. Designation, Glacier Guide. 9-year tenure on Athabasca Glacier. Specialized knowledge of ice dynamics, crevasse rescue, and wilderness medicine. She paused. Useful data. Will be preserved. My stomach turned over. That wasn't Sarah talking. Sarah was a marine biologist from Vancouver who laughed too loud at her own jokes and asked questions constantly. The thing using her voice was something else entirely. It had accessed her memories, her knowledge, her language. But the person behind it was gone. Marco shone his headlamp directly into her eyes. No pupil response. The milky film didn't react to light at all. Jake pressed 2 fingers to her neck and checked his watch. 32 beats per minute, he said quietly. A normal resting heart rate is 60 to 100. 32 means the body is barely maintaining function. But she was still alive. Still breathing. Still talking. Something was using her biological systems as a platform while it extracted everything stored in her mind. Her memories. Her knowledge. Her personality. All of it being absorbed like data transferred from one system to another. And now it knew everything Sarah knew. Marine biology. Ocean chemistry. How organisms survive in extreme environments. The biology of things that live in deep cold water under massive pressure. Sarah had spent her career studying life that shouldn't exist. Life that thrived in conditions that should be impossible. She had gone into that crevasse as a scientist, and now the organism had everything she'd learned. I thought about what Dr. Holloway had said. Distributed nervous system. Chemical signaling. Primitive cognition. It wasn't primitive anymore. Every person it absorbed made it smarter. Every mind it processed gave it new information, new tools, new understanding of the world above the ice. This thing had been asleep for 40,000 years. In 12 hours, it had learned how to speak English. I looked at Jake and Marco. "We need to go up," I said. "Right now." "We're leaving her?" Marco asked. I looked at Sarah's clouded eyes. "She's already gone," I said. "And whatever took her just got a lot more dangerous." Back at base camp, I pulled up the satellite feed. What I saw made me set down my coffee and not pick it up again. 36 hours ago, we had 4 isolated crevasses. Unusual, unexplained, but isolated. The satellite was now showing 28. They spread across 3 square kilometers in a radial pattern, like spokes on a wheel, all connecting back to one central point. The formations weren't following natural fracture lines in the glacier. Glaciers crack along stress patterns, predictable geometry based on flow direction and weight distribution. These were following subsurface channels, organic pathways, growing deliberately, not breaking randomly. And the epicenter of the entire network sat directly beneath the Athabasca Glacier Discovery Center. The Discovery Center is the main tourist facility for the glacier. During the peak summer season, it sees over 300 visitors every day. School groups, families, tour buses from Calgary and Edmonton rolling in every few hours. It was a food source. The organism wasn't spreading randomly. It was growing toward the highest concentration of people it could detect. I called Parks Canada Regional Command and laid out everything. The satellite data, the lab results. Sarah, all of it. They ordered immediate evacuation of all facilities within a 5-kilometer radius. The public statement was issued within the hour. Structural instability due to unprecedented glacial melt rates. All visitor facilities temporarily closed. Precautionary measure only. No public safety threat at this time. No mention of the organism. No mention of Sarah. No mention of 28 crevasses that had appeared in 36 hours. I found the regional director in the command tent. "People need to know what this is," I said. "They need to understand what they're being evacuated from." He looked at me over his reading glasses. "What exactly would you like me to tell them?" His voice was flat. That a 40,000-year-old organism is growing beneath the glacier and absorbing people? That a marine biologist is currently being digested by ancient ice? "Yes," I said. "Basically that." And when the international media arrives? When conspiracy theories start spreading faster than the organism itself? When we have 10,000 people trying to drive to the glacier to see it, or 10,000 more refusing to evacuate because they think it's a government cover-up? I didn't answer. "We contain this quietly," he said, "or we lose control of everything. The evacuation buys us time. Use it." He turned back to his maps. I stood there for a moment. Then I walked out. He wasn't entirely wrong. I knew that panic spreads faster than any organism, and an evacuation without explanation was better than no evacuation at all. But containment required a plan, and right now, nobody had one. I went back to the research library, pulled up the 1923 report again, read through it more carefully this time, looking for anything I'd missed. At the bottom of the archive folder, there was a second file. Smaller, unlabeled. I opened it. It was a personal journal. Handwritten pages, scanned individually. The handwriting was tight and urgent. The name on the inside cover was Dr. Elliot Vance. This wasn't the official report. This was his private record, filed separately, overlooked for 100 years. I started reading, and on page 31, I found exactly what I needed. Vance's journal started in early June 1923. The first entries were scientific, precise, the same careful voice as the official report. He documented temperatures, measurements, and observations. Professional fieldwork from 100 years ago. Then the tone shifted. By June 8th, his team had already tried to stop it. First attempt, explosives. They detonated charges in 3 locations around the primary crevasse system, hoping to collapse the organism structure. Vance wrote, "Catastrophic error. Fragmentation did not kill it. Each separated mass began independent growth. We now have 11 sites instead of 3. Explosives are not a solution. They are fertilizer." I stopped reading and let that land. They had tried explosives and made it worse. 11 growth sites instead of 3. I kept reading. Second attempt, fire. They used fuel canisters and torches directly on the exposed organism tissue. The organism absorbs thermal energy, Vance wrote. Fire does not destroy it. Fire feeds it. Growth rate accelerated by approximately 40% following thermal exposure. Do not use heat. Do not use fire. Third attempt, chemical agents. Carbolic acid. Lye. Industrial compounds that would kill most biological matter. No visible effect. The organism's cellular structure appears resistant to chemical disruption at the pH levels we can safely deploy. We are running out of options. Then a gap of 2 days. No entries. When Vance picked up his pen again, his handwriting had changed. Tighter. More urgent. June 15th. I believe I understand its weakness. The organism survives through thermal adaptability. It adjusts to temperature changes gradually. This is its strength in frozen environments. But it is also its vulnerability. Gradual change it can handle. Rapid, extreme thermal shock, instant temperature reversal beyond its adaptive capacity, may overwhelm its biological systems before it can respond. He described the plan in careful detail. First, bury the organism under sudden compression. A controlled avalanche. Tons of compacted snow and ice driving down on the crevasse network simultaneously. Second, immediately follow with liquid nitrogen. His team carried LN2 canisters for ice core preservation, standard equipment for glaciology fieldwork in 1923. Liquid nitrogen drops temperature to negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit in seconds. The combination would work differently than either element alone. The avalanche would compress and immobilize. The nitrogen would drop the temperature so fast the organism couldn't adapt. Thermal shock. Too sudden. Too extreme. The final entry was dated June 17, 1923. It worked. Deployment of avalanche followed immediately by full nitrogen saturation of the compacted debris. The organism's thermal signature dropped to negative 280 degrees Fahrenheit within seconds of nitrogen contact. All peristaltic motion ceased. Growth indicators dropped to 0. The crevasse network is dormant. Then one more line, written separately. Like he added it later. This is not death. This is sleep. The organism is frozen, not destroyed. If the surrounding ice melts beyond a critical threshold, it will wake again. We have buried the problem, not solved it. Pray that future generations have better tools than we did. I closed the journal. He had buried it in 1923 with a controlled avalanche and liquid nitrogen. I needed to do the same thing. Avalanche control explosives were standard equipment at any glacier facility. We had them in the Parks Canada emergency cache. The liquid nitrogen was the problem. We didn't carry it routinely. The quantities required would be significant. I started thinking about where I could find industrial LN2 storage in a remote glacial environment. Then I remembered something. There was an abandoned research station on the North Ridge, built in the 1960s, decommissioned in 1985, partially buried by ice. I had hiked past it on my third season here. Grab my pack. The old station was a 40-minute hike from base camp. I went alone. Faster that way. The building had been a glaciology research outpost, built in 1962 when Parks Canada was running long-term ice core studies across the Columbia icefield. It was decommissioned in 1985 when satellite monitoring made ground stations less necessary. Nobody had used it since. I found it half buried in ice on the North Ridge. The roof was still intact. The door had frozen shut, but a crowbar from my pack fixed that in about 30 seconds. Inside was cold and dark and smelled like old metal and dust. I swept my headlamp across the interior. The equipment was vintage. Old gauges, analog instruments, steel shelving bolted to the walls. Everything is coated in a thin layer of frost. And in the back corner, lined up against the wall like soldiers, 6 liquid nitrogen dewars. They were old. Serious age on the exterior, paint faded, some surface rust on the outer casings. But the inner vessels were stainless steel, vacuum sealed. I checked each one carefully. The seals were intact. I knocked on the sides and listened to the sound. All 6 were still carrying liquid nitrogen after nearly 40 years of sitting in a frozen outpost. Combined capacity was approximately 180 liters. Liquid nitrogen hits negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. It doesn't gradually cool things down. It flash freezes. Biological tissue, mechanical systems, chemical reactions, all of it stops in seconds. 180 liters, deployed correctly into a compressed area, would be enough. The avalanche explosives were in a weatherproof bunker built into the hillside 10 meters from the station. Standard equipment for glacial facilities, used to manage snow stability and prevent uncontrolled slides near infrastructure. The bunker was locked with a mechanical combination. I called base camp for the code. The plan was clean. Detonate the charges along the ridge above the central crevasse network. Trigger a controlled avalanche. Drive tons of compacted snow and ice down onto the organism's core simultaneously. Then descend immediately and flood the compressed debris with all 180 liters of LN2. Compression first. Thermal shock second. Faster than the organism could adapt. The same thing Vance did in 1923, just with better equipment. The risk was real. If the avalanche ran too large, it could destabilize the surrounding ice field. There were still evacuees moving out of the area. A miscalculated slide could threaten the access routes. Timing would be critical. I radioed Parks Canada Command and laid out the full plan. Equipment locations. Deployment sequence. Timing windows. The response came back in under 2 minutes. Negative. Plan not approved. Risk to personnel and infrastructure is unacceptable. Federal biohazard response teams are being mobilized. Stand by for further instruction. How long? I asked. 72 to 96 hours for full team deployment. 3 to 4 days. I looked at the satellite data on my phone. 28 crevasses. Growing. The organism was already within 400 meters of the Discovery Center's foundation. In 72 hours, it wouldn't matter who showed up. I started loading the dewars onto the equipment sled I'd found inside the station. My radio crackled. It was Marco. His voice was tight. You need to come back to the main crevasse site right now. Why? Sarah just walked out of it. I got back to the main site in 20 minutes. Sarah was standing outside the command tent. She was upright, steady. No stumbling, no disorientation. 8 hours ago, she had been chest deep in a glacier wall with a heart rate of 32 beats per minute. Now she was walking around in the dark like nothing had happened. Her eyes were still clouded. That milky film hadn't cleared. She was wearing the same clothes she'd gone into the crevasse in. They were dry. Not frozen. Not even damp. Marco and Jake stood 10 feet back from her. Neither of them had approached. I walked toward her and stopped about 6 feet away. She turned her head and looked directly at me. Even with those clouded eyes, the movement was precise. She knew exactly where I was. Resistance is resource inefficient, she said. Same flat voice as before. No warmth. No, Sarah. Integration offers preservation. Your neural patterns, memories, and knowledge will persist within the collective. Individual death becomes obsolete. You will experience thousands of years of continuous existence. I didn't say anything. She continued. The collective currently holds 47 human consciousness profiles absorbed since reactivation. Each profile expands adaptive capacity, language acquisition, technological understanding, environmental mapping. She paused. Integration is not destruction. It is a continuation. I looked at her face, at the shape of it. Sarah's cheekbones, Sarah's jaw, Sarah's hands hanging at her sides. Whatever was using her body had learned to stand still. Learned that stillness reads as calm to humans. Learned that calm lowers resistance. It was using everything it had already absorbed. You want something specific, I said. Otherwise you'd just take it. Her head tilted slightly. A few degrees. Like a camera adjusting focus. Voluntary integration produces higher fidelity consciousness transfer, she said. Resistance degrades the neural profile during absorption. Willing subjects retain more complete memories. So it preferred willing subjects. Cleaner data. What do you want from me specifically? I asked. You understand cold preservation principles. Cryogenic deployment. Avalanche dynamics. Thermal shock mechanics. Another pause. You carry knowledge of the one process capable of inducing dormancy. This knowledge, integrated into the collective, allows preemptive adaptation. Future dormancy risk approaches zero. There was. The organism had absorbed Sarah's scientific knowledge. Through her, she had learned enough to understand that what Vance did in 1923 could be done again. And it wanted my specific operational knowledge, the how, the where, the timing, so it could evolve a defense against it. It wasn't just hungry. It was strategic. You are optimal, Sarah's body said. 9 years of glacial experience. Technical rescue knowledge. Familiarity with this specific ice field. Integration of your profile would accelerate collective adaptation by an estimated 31%. I stood there and thought about what it was actually offering. 47 people have already been absorbed. 47 minds running inside something ancient and frozen. Maybe they were still in there. Maybe they experienced something. Maybe it wasn't nothing. Maybe it was exactly nothing, and the organism just believed it was preserving them because that framing made assimilation more efficient. I thought about Sarah laughing too loud at her own jokes on day one of the trek. No, I said. Sarah's head tilted the other direction. Still calm. Clarify. I'm not integrating, I said. I'm not joining. And I'm not giving you what you want. A long pause. Resistance will result in non-voluntary absorption, she said. Neural profile fidelity will be significantly reduced. This outcome is suboptimal for both parties. Noted, I said. I looked at Marco and Jake. Get the doers on the primary sled and move them to the ridge staging point, I said. Right now. They moved immediately. Sarah's body watched me, that clouded gaze tracking every step. You cannot induce dormancy without risk to yourself, she said. I know, I said. I picked up my pack and walked toward the ridge. Sarah's body followed me toward the ridge. It kept pace, steady, patient, like it had all the time in the world. Which it did. It had been frozen for 40,000 years. A few more hours meant nothing to it. I keyed my radio and reached the demolition team. 2 Parks Canada avalanche control specialists who had been standing by on the North Ridge since the evacuation started. They had the charges already placed. I had asked them to prep the ridge lines 6 hours ago, before command told me to stand down. They had kept quiet about it. We're green, I said. Deploy on my mark. A pause on the radio. Command is going to have our heads, one of them said. Command isn't standing next to a 40,000-year-old organism wearing a marine biologist, I said. Mark in 60 seconds. Start your count. I pulled on the cryoprotective gear. Insulated gloves. Face shield. Thermal coveralls over my base layers. The kind of protection you need when you're working with liquid nitrogen in an open environment. Sarah's body stopped 10 meters away and watched me suit up. This action will not produce the outcome you anticipate, it said. Maybe not, I said. I looked at it directly. At Sarah's face. At whatever was looking back at me through those clouded eyes. I'd rather die a human than live as part of you. It tilted its head. Processing. Then my radio counted down to 0. The charges detonated. The sound was enormous. A series of deep concussive blasts rolling across the ridge in rapid sequence, one after another. 4,000 pounds of controlled explosive hitting the snowpack above the crevasse network simultaneously. The ridge came down. A wall of snow and ice moving faster than it looks possible for something that heavy to move. It poured into the crevasse network like water filling a drain. Tons of compacted material driving straight down into the organism's core. The ground shook. I braced my legs and stayed upright. The avalanche ran for 40 seconds. Then it stopped. Where the crevasse network had been, there was now a massive field of compressed snow and ice debris. 40 feet deep at the center. Maybe more. I pulled out the thermal imaging camera. The hot zone was still visible beneath the debris. A red-orange mass, dimmer than before but still active. Still alive. The compression had damaged it, disrupted its structure, but it was still functioning. I grabbed the first doer and moved into the debris field. The footing was terrible. Broken ice chunks and compressed snow, unstable underfoot. I fell twice in the first 30 meters. Got up both times and kept moving. Marco appeared beside me with the second doer. Jake had the third. We didn't discuss it. We just moved. The thermal camera led me to the center of the hot zone. I could feel the heat even through the cryo gear. 80 degrees Fahrenheit rising from beneath compacted snow and ice. I opened the first drawer. Liquid nitrogen doesn't pour like water. It flows in a white boiling cloud, dropping everything it contacts to negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit instantly. The air around it crackles. The ground beneath it pops and contracts. I dumped the full canister into the center of the hot zone. The effect was immediate and violent. A burst of white vapor exploded outward. The snow around the pour point contracted sharply, a sound like a rifle crack spreading in every direction. I opened the second drawer, dumped it, moved 2 meters and dumped the third. Marco and Jake deployed theirs simultaneously from different positions around the hot zone. 180 liters total. All of it in under 90 seconds. The thermal camera showed the change in real time. The red-orange mass went orange, then yellow, then green, then blue, then black. Negative 280 degrees Fahrenheit. In less than 30 seconds. Behind me, I heard a sound. A body hitting the ground. I turned. Sarah was down. 200 meters away, it collapsed in the snow. Face down. Completely still. Not moving. The strings had been cut. I stood there in the debris field, surrounded by white nitrogen vapor, a thermal camera showing nothing but cold blue across the entire area. Flat. No heat signature. Dormant. I sat down on a block of ice and didn't move for a while. My hands were shaking inside the cryo gloves. Not from the cold. From everything else. Marco's voice came over the radio. Thermal signature is gone. Across the entire network. Copy, I said. It worked. For now, I said. I climbed out of the debris field and let the Parks Canada medical team check me over. Mild hypothermia. Some bruising from the falls. Nothing permanent. Behind me, the glacier sat quiet in the morning light. Dormant again. But not dead. Never dead. The official report was released 3 weeks later. Structural collapse due to unprecedented glacial instability required emergency evacuation of Athabasca Glacier visitor facilities. One fatality, Dr. Sarah Chin, research participant, cause of death crevasse fall. Area closed indefinitely pending comprehensive geological survey. No further public safety risk at this time. I didn't correct it. Sarah deserved better than that. She deserved her name in a real report with real findings. She deserved to be remembered as the scientist she was, not listed as a crevasse accident in a document designed to bury the truth. But I also knew what a real report would do. And I didn't have the energy to fight that battle. Not yet. I left the glacier guiding. 9 years of that work and I walked away from it in a single afternoon. Handed in my certification renewal paperwork without completing it. Cleared out my equipment locker at the Jasper Base Camp. Parks Canada offered me a research position instead. Monitoring subsurface temperatures across Rocky Mountain glaciers using satellite thermal imaging. Watching for anomalies. Looking for things that shouldn't be there. I took it. My day now starts the same way every day. Laptop. 6 hours of thermal data from the satellite network. I check it every 6 hours around the clock. I have alerts set up on my phone for anything above 35 degrees Fahrenheit in a subsurface glacier reading. Most days, nothing triggers. 1 week ago, a signature appeared 65 kilometers north of Athabasca. Same pattern. Same heat curve. The warm spot appeared over 48 hours, starting small and expanding outward in a radial pattern. I flagged it immediately. Filed a full report. Recommended immediate ground survey and facility closure. The response came back in 2 days. Anomaly noted. Added to monitoring queue. Survey team availability, 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. 3 days ago, a second signature appeared. 40 kilometers east of the first one. I stared at the 2 heat signatures on my screen for a long time. Then I pulled up a climate projection model. Current warming rates applied to Rocky Mountain glacier systems through 2050. 60% of glaciers in this region will experience significant melt within 25 years. Not gradual thinning. Significant structural melt. The kind that exposes whatever has been frozen inside. I thought about Vance's final journal entry. This is not death. This is sleep. How many of these organisms were out there? Not just in the Rockies, the Alps, the Himalayas, the Andes, Greenland, Antarctica. Glaciers that have been frozen for tens of thousands of years, all of them warming, all of them thinning, all of them slowly exposing whatever was buried inside before the last ice age locked everything down. We had contained one organism at one glacier. We had done it using 100-year-old field notes and equipment from an abandoned research station. We had gotten lucky. The organism at Athabasca was dormant. The 2 new signatures were growing. I didn't have another 180 liters of liquid nitrogen. I didn't have an avalanche control team on standby. I didn't have anything except a satellite feed and an inbox full of low-priority responses from people who didn't understand what they were looking at. I closed the climate model and looked out the window. The mountains were still there. Still white. Still beautiful. Still melting. And somewhere beneath the ice, in dozens of locations I hadn't found yet, something ancient was slowly waking up. The conference was in Calgary. 300 climate scientists in one room. The speaker showed projections on a screen the size of a wall. Antarctic ice shelves collapsing. Greenland loses 280 billion tons of ice every year. Himalayan glaciers receding faster than any recorded period in human history. The audience took notes. Asked questions about carbon models and sea level projections. I sat in the back row and thought about what was buried in all that ice. Not just one organism. Not just the Rockies. All of it. My phone buzzed during the final presentation. Encrypted email. Sender, Dr. Ingrid Solberg, Norwegian Institute for Glaciology, Svalbard Research Station. Subject line, urgent. Expertise required. The message was 4 sentences. Found something in a crevasse near Longyearbyen. Warm air rising. Smooth walls. Same fluid as your Canadian samples. Need you here. There was one attachment. A photo of a crevasse wall, glowing faintly blue. Smooth. Organic looking. I recognized it immediately. I typed back 2 words. On my way. I closed my laptop and looked at the screen at the front of the room. We thought melting ice was a disaster. We were wrong. The disaster is what's inside the ice, waiting to be freed.